How old are you when you come to New York? And is it, I assume, mom and dad's choice to bring you guys here?
Yeah, my grandparents immigrated to the United States in the late 70s. We were kind of from a well-to-do family, and my grandparents were kind of government officials, and they had the resources to send their children out of the country for college. My dad was married, and he couldn't just get up and go to college in America, so we were in Iran. But all my aunts started moving to Oklahoma in the 70s.
Okay.
And by 1978, everybody was here.
Yeah.
In 1979, the Iranian Revolution happened. And at that point, our lives changed dramatically, and we were no longer able to leave the country. And about a year after that, Iraq attacked Iran, and the war started. And my hometown was probably 20 or 30 miles from the front line of the war.
So
we were directly impacted.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Do you remember much about that?
Oh, I remember so much of that.
Yeah.
I was very little when the revolution happened, and I was a little bit older when the war happened. But growing up, I always knew that things were just not normal.
Right.
Things were not what they were when my parents were younger. And since our hometown was so close to the front of the war, it was one of the first places that was attacked. It was one of the first cities that the Iraqi forces attacked. I remember the first day that the war had started that I knew about. Is I was hospitalized because I had some breathing problems, and my mom had come to the hospital to visit me, and we were sitting on the steps of the hospital. We were having a picnic, and I remember just seeing a jet just fly so low. I'd never seen something like this. It just went zoom, zoom, and I could see the pilot's helmet.
Right.
It was so close. And I looked at my mom, and my mom looked at me, and she had this look of horror on her face. And that's when it all started.
Yeah.
I clearly remember that. I think I was about 3 or 4. And it went from there. And we spent the next 2 years trying to leave that town to go to another town, but it was such a difficult process. My father had a job, my mom had a job. They just couldn't get up and go.
Yeah.
So it took us a couple years to get out of there.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's such I can't imagine how just that was for your mom and dad too, right? With you, young family, and just we need for the health, for the safety of our future and the children, we need to get out of this place now.
It became really evident that we had to go because the bombing raids were intensifying as the days would go by, and you would just be at home, and then the sirens would go off, and everybody would gather together in the most inside place of a house, which is probably our bathroom. It took a couple years for us to get out, and I remember when we finally were able to get out, my dad just sent my mom and my sister to the train station. He couldn't even come with us because it was just so much chaos. And we get to the train station, and the train station is just what you would imagine. You see, fleeing Germany in World War II. They're just
people everywhere.
Just people everywhere. People are yelling. People are crying. It's chaos. So we get into the train, and we're just crammed. I'm sitting in my mom's lap, and my sister is sitting on my mom's lap, and she's just clutching us tight. My dad's not with us. So this train just got loaded and loaded and loaded, and we got to a point where there was just absolutely no more room in the train. And then they just closed the doors, and it was summertime, it was hot. The train finally left. And then the kind of a party atmosphere started. All the people that were on this train were kind of relieved. They were sad. They were happy. It was so much mixed emotions and feelings. And a few hours later, the sun had set, and then we were kind of getting a sense of things are kind of going to be normal. And then the train just stopped in the middle of the night. All the lights in the train stopped. And then we could hear bombing start from way back. And then it just got louder and louder and louder. And it just got to the point where, we just thought that was it.
Yeah.
But everything just went quiet. 30 minutes later, an hour later, the lights turned on. People started to kind of go about their normal business, and they were relieved that we didn't get bombed. But our train was delayed to such a long time. So finally, the train got going, and we got to Tehran about 16 hours later than we should have. And when we got to Tehran, the place was pitch black. All the lights, the electricity to the city had been turned off to kind of deter bombing raids and to kind of obscure some of the targets. My grandpa was supposed to come pick us up. No. He wasn't there. There was not a soul on the street. It was just my mom, my sister, and I. A car with his lights turned off just pulled in front of the train station and said, "Ma'am, you need a ride?" And my mom really didn't have a choice. There's no cars, there's no taxis, there's nothing. So my mom just put us in the car, just had faith that this person was going to take care of us. And that person drove us up to our grandparents' house, and my grandpa was standing on top of the hill waiting for us to come.
Amazing.
So we got there. That was the first part of my journey that turned out okay.
Right. Yeah. So in this point, like you said, you've got family already kind of in the States at this point, right? Like you said, you said were they in politics, or they work for the government, so they kind of way to get out?
Yeah, the oil company in Iran is the wealthiest organization. Yeah. And my grandfather was a kind of a high official for the oil company, and we were from the oil producing region of the country. Okay. So we had that. But prior to the revolution, everybody in my family worked for the oil company as well, and they got scholarships and money to send their kids to educate them abroad. That's just kind of what we did. My dad worked for an American company before that. It was an AMC tank company. So we had the privilege of knowing lots of Americans, having a good paying job, and having status in the community over there. Not necessarily by our income level or how much money we had, but it's just because my family was known to be helpers, to be charitable people, and to give.
Hardworking too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love touching on this stuff, right? Because I can't relate to being attacked and bombed, but I can relate to like the immigrant type of like just education for us is kind of the way out, right? And America is just seen as like just so much opportunity, and if you can just get there and figure out life there, even if you just get here and you start scrubbing floors or whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
100%.
The life here is so much better here than it potentially could have been, especially from what you just mentioned back home.
100%. When you're a kid and you get an opportunity to make a wish, you have a birthday, or you got an eyelash in your eye. And my biggest dream my entire life, as far as I can remember, was to come to America. So I adored America. I adored American things. I loved everything about this country. I'd heard about it my entire life. And when I turned 11, I finally had a chance to do that.
Yeah.
I remember when we landed in Oklahoma, I met dozens and dozens of relatives I'd never met, but I'd just talked to on the phone, or I had seen pictures of, and I got into the car with my aunt, and she drove me home to Northwest 18th and about Ann Arbor. And I just remember going from the airport to that house and thinking, my God, everything is so big. Everything is so flat. There's so much space for every single person. And I just remember being so happy, and I felt free, and I felt like, okay, now my life is really going to start.